The way my parents parented was very much like, we don't fight around the kids. We don't ever say anything around them. There was no, we didn't know anything.
A prominent granddaughter stepped face to face with a mysterious figure her bloodline had kept hidden for decades, and her body language exposed something that silence could never conceal. The cameras rolled. Millions online witnessed the moment. The footage struck a nerve in viewers' hearts because this was no tabloid scandal. This was a family mystery surfacing from the depths of generational secrecy, and it caught the Presley household completely off guard. The footage that stopped the internet cold during the summer of 2026, a video began spreading across social platforms with velocity that baffled even seasoned content analysts. The clip featured a famous family member meeting a gospel vocalist face-to-face for what seemed to be the very first meaningful encounter. When the granddaughter laid her gaze upon the pastor, her expression shifted in unmistakable ways. This was not surprise in the conventional sense. It was recognition, that peculiar feeling when something theoretical becomes tangible, when abstract knowledge transforms into embodied experience. She approached him deliberately. The physicality of that movement conveyed its own language. No hesitation fractured the moment. No resistance pulled her backward. What unfolded was pure, unfiltered relief, the relief of finally releasing a burden carried for years. Viewers instinctively grasped that the emotion on display was unscripted. In our contemporary landscape, celebrity exchanges undergo meticulous calculation. Marketing teams pre-approve every gesture. Publicists filter every tear. Yet this reaction transcended all that institutional architecture. The audience recognized authenticity before cognition caught up. Almost immediately, questions flooded comment sections and message boards like an unstoppable tide. Who stood across from her? Why did her body convey such profound emotional impact? What intelligence held by the Presley dynasty remained unknown to the broader public? Most disturbingly, if the relationship was unremarkable, what justified the extended family concealment? These inquiries created mounting pressure against an infrastructure the family had constructed methodically across 5 decades. For the first time in their carefully managed existence, structural cracks became visible damage no press release could repair. To comprehend what fractured, one must first understand how the family was engineered. The dynasty, built on controlled narrative, the woman in question arrived on May 29, 1989, in California, daughter of one of the family's principal members and a musician. She never encountered her legendary grandfather. The icon had passed a dozen years before her birth. Yet his absence wielded enormous influence on her trajectory, comparable in magnitude to his visible presence affecting others. Since infancy, she was never simply a child. She embodied the living extension of entertainment history's most storied lineage. That position demanded unwritten protocols that each family member internalized organically. In early 2025, during a major media conversation, the granddaughter articulated how the family operated internally. She explained that her parents maintained strict emotional boundaries. Conflict stayed hidden. Conversations stayed filtered. She reached age 5 when her mother partnered with an entertainment titan amid serious public allegations. She remained entirely unaware. No guardian explained the situation. She never independently sought understanding. The perimeter her parents constructed functioned so thoroughly that historical entertainment upheaval transpired literally within her domestic walls and bypassed her completely. This caliber of shielding produces particular psychological consequences. Young minds absorb lessons about language and presence. You become attuned to what gets deliberately omitted. You understand that specific identities carry significant significance you sense viscerally but cannot articulate in conversation. Loyalty morphs into keeping secrets, sometimes permanently, because knowing something's weight becomes your family inheritance. Within this framework, particular individuals inhabited peculiar spaces in the family's consciousness. They existed as an unspoken presence, simultaneously recognized and deliberately unacknowledged. Like a sealed room within your ancestral home. You know it resides there. You perceive the heaviness of what's compartmentalized inside. Yet nobody distributes keys. And early socialization teaches you that requesting entrance generates more complications than tolerating the unknowing. The evangelist from the South who sought no recognition, a man, was born in mid-1952 in the American Southeast. He married his childhood sweetheart in the mid-1970s. Together they established a household, produced offspring, and have since welcomed extended family across generations. Around 2010, he initiated what ultimately became a worship community in Arkansas, assembling with just a handful of believers weekly in simple conditions, prioritizing spiritual devotion over organizational growth. By 2014, the gathering had expanded sufficiently to occupy a commercial space down Salem Road, later relocating to a larger venue accommodating roughly 35 to 40 congregants. He delivers sermons each Sunday, drawing directly from the King James translation. The operation maintains no compensated positions. The congregation engages in no merchandise transactions. He avoids internet-based private correspondence. His public website contains explicit warnings. Imposters have hijacked his identity repeatedly on digital platforms, and none represent authentic accounts. The conspiracy that transformed this unremarkable clergy member into international headline commenced when YouTube circulated recordings of his Sunday vocal performances. His sound registers as profoundly resonant, genuinely extraordinary, and produces striking auditory parallels to the iconic vocalist who revolutionized popular entertainment in the 20th century. The manner he positions microphones, the Southern inflection embedded in his communication, the stage bearing he projects all these elements reawakened powerful emotional responses in millions who spent lifetimes processing the death of someone they idolized but never encountered. A lifelong enthusiast of the legendary performer experienced these video recordings and publicly declared certainty. He expressed hopes that the pastor would someday authenticate his true identity. The evangelist has responded to such claims persistently and consistently. He confirms his actual biographical data, born 1952, pastoral vocation, married with family. The legendary performer was born 1935. That mathematical gap, 17 years, immediately dismantles the hypothesis. The entertainment icon would reach 91 by 2026. The evangelist was 74. Beyond chronology, the performer exhibited blue irises, the pastor exhibits dark ones. The performer's dentition showed no separation between front teeth, the pastor's does. Biological and documentational evidence proves unambiguous. The evangelist is unequivocally not the deceased performer. He has articulated this repeatedly. The evidence supports his testimony without equivocation, yet the assertion persists relentlessly. And this persistence reveals something fundamental about human psychology. We connect through narrative and emotion rather than empirical data. Comprehending how a faith-based vocalist with formidable vocal capacity becomes entangled with a deceased legend's mythology demands examining a component of that legend's existence rarely explored. The spiritual quest that fortune never addressed the legendary entertainer transcended mere performance. He functioned as a spiritual explorer. His hunger for deeper meaning burned so intensely, so relentlessly, and with such privacy that his closest confidants lacked framework for comprehending it, much less articulating it publicly. From boyhood onward, he immersed himself in the gospel music traditions flourishing in Southern worship spaces. Gospel quartets performing at evangelical churches represented his most formative musical exposure. These weren't peripheral entertainment. They constructed the foundational architecture of his artistic consciousness. Each Grammy Award he accumulated throughout his performing years resulted exclusively from gospel compositions, not from the rock offerings that established his worldwide celebrity. This detail alone should recalibrate public comprehension of his fundamental identity. During spring of 1964, he connected with a young professional who would permanently reshape his internal world. During their initial styling session, they engaged in extended philosophical dialogue. The professional later documented that the entertainer posed fundamental existential questions. Among infinite individuals, what determined that he specifically became who he became? The professional recalled sensing profound emptiness residing within him, an absence that materialistic abundance and romantic encounters could not remediate. That identical day, the entertainer offered employment to the professional, beginning an intense intellectual companionship. He systematically absorbed literature, examining Hindu philosophy, Judaic tradition, numeric symbolism, esoteric systems, and mystical interpretations of Christian doctrine, consuming knowledge with ferocious intentionality that shocked his surrounding circle. The entertainer himself articulated what motivated his deepest searching. He told his confidant he desired singular objectives, understanding ultimate reality, experiencing transcendence, and maintaining perpetual spiritual investigation. That was his fundamental orientation. He specifically requested gospel composition performance on a prominent television broadcast honoring his deceased parent, disregarding network objections. He deliberately introduced spiritual music into a secular entertainment venue when management demanded exclusively commercial material. He developed a contemplative garden at his residence, a sanctuary intentionally designed for introspection and meditation, ultimately serving as burial ground for himself and additional family members. This characterization contradicts the legend, a man perpetually dissatisfied with renown, perpetually reaching toward something transcendence offered, but success never could. Individuals who accessed that private dimension, that introspective spirituality, became among the family's most guarded relationships. The concealed medical record and 50 years of questions the performer's body was discovered motionless in his bathroom at his primary residence on August 16, 1977. He was 4 decades and 2 years old. The county medical examiner conducted a preliminary examination and designated the presumed mechanism as cardiac dysfunction. When initial investigation failed to clarify what triggered the cardiac event, and documentation showed multiple pharmaceutical substances within his physical system, speculation proliferated with uncontrollable momentum. The family witnessed global scrutiny dissecting their loved one's death publicly, and they reached a determination that would reverberate across 50 subsequent years of speculative culture. They commissioned supplementary private examination. Those findings underwent confidential storage. Public disclosure remains restricted until August 16, 2027. The examining investigator functioned as sole non-family observer during this procedure. He subsequently provided explanation focusing on chronic gastrointestinal dysfunction stemming from prolonged pharmaceutical consumption and dietary excess, arguing this mechanism compressed a major vessel terminating circulation. A different medical professional, having reviewed the secured documentation while supporting the performer's personal physician during litigation, advanced divergent interpretation. This clinician attributed the performer's deterioration to significant cranial injury sustained years earlier rather than substance misuse. The confidentiality surrounding this medical examination constructed exactly the informational vacuum that speculative theories require. Lacking definitive public disclosure, alternative explanations obtained cultural space. The evangelist hypothesis constitutes one such narrative. Documentation like alleged genetic incompatibility between samples represents another. When a news organization sought to resolve the matter through genetic testing, the family member declined cooperation. No credentialed scientific organization has validated these assertions, yet their persistence demonstrates something profoundly human: how grief resists concluding when official documentation remains sequestered. The woman who rejected family tradition, the prominent granddaughter, did not transform into a pattern breaker instantaneously. Evolution occurred incrementally, each phase more visibly revolutionary than preceding stages. When her sibling died during mid-2020, the family's emotional infrastructure shifted irreversibly. When her mother passed on January 12, 2023, the granddaughter assumed control of the primary estate and inherited an artistic legacy at 33 years. bearing responsibility for an inheritance that had previously destroyed loved ones. During 2024's latter period, she discovered attempted criminality, fraudulent organizations claiming her deceased mother authorized multi-million-dollar obligations against the estate. She responded through comprehensive litigation encompassing 60 pages of allegations describing forged documentation and fabricated endorsements. An official responsible for authenticating signatures submitted sworn testimony denying any direct encounter with her mother. She prevailed. Law enforcement detained an individual connected to the scheme. The granddaughter had defended her family's tangible inheritance against external theft, leveraging her mother's forged identity as weapon and secured victory. Subsequently, she engaged with her mother's recorded memories. Prior to death, her mother had documented oral histories unfiltered, authentic retrospectives on Graceland existence, on experiencing family tragedy intimately, on personal struggles and generational trauma. The granddaughter absorbed these audiovisual documents while in solitude. Hearing her deceased mother narrate experiences nobody else could corroborate, she completed literary composition based on these materials. The resulting publication achieved bestseller status. A prominent media personality selected it for her cultural book club. During their discussion, the granddaughter disclosed that her mother had repeatedly sensed something was fundamentally deteriorating with her parent. The mother had discovered him struggling merely to maintain upright posture. As a child, the granddaughter's mother had composed letters expressing hope her father would survive. This caliber of transparency does not originate from someone devoted to protecting established narratives. It emerges from someone who has determined that antiquated structural rules no longer generate positive outcomes. The actual truth transcending the viral moment lets establish absolute certainty regarding one fundamental point, because this outweighs superficial speculation. The evangelist is demonstrably not the deceased performer. Documentary evidence, biographical chronology, physiological characteristics, genealogical records, and his own unwavering, unambiguous personal statements collectively establish the same irrefutable conclusion. He exists as a faith leader from the American South, possessing remarkable vocal talent, who has cultivated meaningful spiritual community grounded in Christian tradition. However, the evangelist hypothesis persists not because logical argumentation supports it, but because it symbolizes something deeper: what the deceased performer meant to generations who never personally knew him, yet never fully released their emotional investment. When people absorb an acoustic presence that restructures their emotional vocabulary, when that voice anchors their most significant memories, when it provides accompaniment to romance and devastation and ordinary moments in between, they don't experience loss through conventional bereavement. The granddaughter's public moment didn't substantiate any sensational claim about the performer remaining living. It substantiated something far more significant: that carefully concealed family realities possess expiration dates. What families preserve in silence eventually demands exposure. It demonstrated that space between private family knowledge and permitted public awareness eventually generates unbearable pressure that no strategic management effectively contains. It revealed that unvarnished authenticity, amid engineered experience everywhere, retains capacity to arrest millions mid-thought and produce sensation they cannot adequately describe. During August 2027, the performer's sealed medical examination becomes publicly accessible for the first time across 5 decades. Whether that documentation resolves ongoing speculation or intensifies existing questions, the person holding authority over narrative interpretation is the granddaughter herself. She maintains complete informational access. She commands every institutional door. Based on her demonstrated choices across recent years, she exhibits no interest in perpetuating family concealment any further. The genuinely transformative Presley revelation never centered on performer resurrection theories. It always concerned whether the family possessed willingness to disclose their ancestors' complete, unedited, multifaceted reality publicly. The granddaughter has already responded affirmatively through her choices. Now's your moment. Drop a comment below, sharing your interpretation of that viral encounter, and let Crime Brief know if you believe August 2027 closes speculation or expands it. Smash that like button to support this channel.